The pawn can only move forward, vertically. He can only move one square per turn, except when he is in the initial starting position, from where he can move 2 more squares. The white pawn on f3 has already made its first move from the initial position, so it can only move 1 square to f4. While the white pawn located on b2 is in the initial position of the game and has not made any move yet, this pawn can move 2 squares. So, as a first move, the pawn can play 1 or 2 squares, depending on the player's choice. The pawn may take, with the exception of the king, any of the opponent's pieces standing diagonally next to it. The piece taken from the pawn leaves the field, and the latter takes its place. The white pawn on b3 can take the black knight placed on the white square, diagonally next to it. The pawn takes the place of the horse, driving it off the field. The pawns on the f6 and g7 squares can take each other. The pawn whose turn it is to move takes the opposing pawn, but not necessarily, removing it from the field and taking its place. Getting the pawn to the last rank is a success. This military success must be rewarded. The last rank for white is number 8, and the last rank for black is number 1. The pawn that has reached the last rank no longer stands as a pawn, it turns into one of the pieves, according to the player's wish. Any pawn that reaches the last rank has the right to be promoted, but cannot be promoted to a king, as 2 kings of the same color are not allowed. After promotion, it is replaced by a queen, rook, bishop, or knight of the same suit. Pawns are usually promoted to queens. This is because the queen is the most powerful piece of the game. But in some cases, in special positions, their promotion to rook, knight, or bishop can be preferred. The player may have a queen, but this does not prevent him from promoting a pawn to a new queen. The same happens if he has 2 rooks, knights, or bishops. Capturing and passing is also a special move of the pawn. A pawn can advance 2 squares from its starting square and be placed on a square next to that of an opposing pawn. The opponent's pawn can capture this pawn as if it had moved only 1 square. Black can advance with the c7 pawn 2 squares, going to c5. Both pawns stand next to each other. The white pawn is allowed to take the black pawn as if he had moved only 1 square. The white pawn is placed on the square where the black pawn passed, on c6, and the black pawn is removed from the field. Likewise, the white pawn f2 can advance 2 squares and settle on f4. With this move of the white pawn, the pawns of columns f and g find themselves next to each other. If the black pawn wants, he can take the white pawn f4 by removing it from the square and place himself on the f3 square. This taking and passing can only be done right after the move where the pawn advanced 2 squares, not later.